Own Way, the podcast with me, your host, Kori McClurg. Hey, everybody, welcome back to Get Out of Your Own Way, the podcast. Today, we're going to talk about the book, Get Out of Your Own Way, and the third part of the book, which is power. It's all about unleashing your unique power, your really, setting the world ablaze with that little fire that maybe is kind of burning a little in your gut right now. And once you've been able to really get out of your own way, get out of the constant churning in your mind because of your health concerns or the heaviness of feeling overweight or sick, and that once you've overcome that this is the really exciting part. This is the part where you are unleashing your unique power on the world. So I really dive into that in the third part of the book. And the first point that I really like to make in this part of the book is that getting this far, getting to the point where you've cured yourself, or at least, you're on the way to curing yourself, you've overcome a lot, that getting this far is quite impactful, that, you're starting that ripple in the pond. People notice that you're different, and they'll be curious about how you've gotten healthy and why you seem different, why you seem more positive. You will likely be like a trailblazer. You'll be a unique person amongst the people around you, for this just simple fact that virtually everyone is overweight. And so if you're actually healthy and you or on your way, you're going to be different, and people are going to notice that. And just getting that far is so impactful because you've planted this seed, you're this ripple. And so you should feel really good about that, even if you don't have, this burning passion, or, you haven't had this thing that you always wanted to pursue. You're making an impact. And I think that that's really ultimately what we all want to do, right? We want to leave the world a little better than when we entered the world. We want it to be better than the way we found it. And ultimately, just being a healthier version of you will achieve that, will achieve making the world a better place, because you have positively impacted those around you just by being, even if you don't feel like you're being an example, even if you don't feel like you're a role model, just being a little healthier and moving in that direction is going to be impactful. So, you should feel good about achieving that step. The next thing that you should feel really good about is that when you are able to really embrace, a whole food, more a plant-based diet, that is quite literally like the biggest sort of bang for your buck, impactful thing that you can do for the planet, for the environment, for all of us humans, all of us animals on the planet. A lot of people don't really understand the scope of what's happening in the agriculture industry, and the sheer magnitude of it is just so hard to fathom. So, for example, 80 billion animals are slaughtered each year for human consumption. The energy required to raise each of those animals is just hard to fathom. A cow that's raised for beef consumes up to like 1,200 pounds of hay, corn, wheat, and soybeans to become this grown 1,500 pound animal. Or 12,000 pounds, I think I said 100, 12,000 pounds of hay, corn, wheat, and soybeans to become a grown animal. And then, like I was saying, that could go on for a year, up to 3 years. And though you've gone through conceivably up to 4,500, I mean, up to 36,000 pounds of inputs, you're not getting that 36,000 pounds of output once the animal is killed. So it's inversely proportional of from the inputs to the outputs there. And then dairy, those animals have to consume up to like 25,000 pounds of feed every year because they're not only growing, but they are, that dairy cow is a mom that's meant to be feeding a baby cow. Now, in the dairy industry, that's not actually what happens. The baby cow is removed so that it doesn't consume the dairy that's produced, because the dairy industry, of course, wants to sell the dairy, not to feed the infant cow. So, but the point being that there is a huge input required, double what it is for a cow raised for beef, so that this animal will continue to produce dairy. So what this all amounts to is just like really out of kilter ratio between the inputs of those animal products to the outputs. So like to produce 1 calorie of beef, 40 calories are needed. And it's not just beef. So like for chickens, the ratio is like 4-1. Eggs, it's 39-1. Pigs, it's 14-1. And dairy, it's 14-1. So in comparison, the ratio of grain that you could just eat directly without it passing through an animal first is like 2.2 calories of input for 1 calorie of output. So it's this hugely disproportional. And what that means is that we're growing, right, this vast amount of grain really unnecessarily, because it wouldn't take that. If we were all just eating this grain, if we humans were all just eating this grain, we wouldn't be consuming as much as is required to feed these animals that we are ultimately slaughtering for our consumption. So what that means is all the resources that go into the agriculture required just to feed these animals. So the water that's required, the chemicals that are put on the plants, the pesticides, the fertilizers, the sheer human energy that's required to grow and harvest these grains is just so lopsided. Not to mention the fuel that drives the equipment and the trucks to transport. Like there's this whole back end system that's required to create enough food to feed these animals. And so the point being, if you are removing yourself from that, then you've already made a huge impact in the environment, for example, by not participating in that. There's a whole, I discuss extensively in the book monocropping, which is the means of farming that primarily these grains are grown by, and that there are some significant environmental impacts. The Dust Bowl was effectively created by monocropping. I'll probably skip the description of what monocropping is and why that's his huge environmental impact. But suffice to say that it's destructive to the environment and long impacting not just to our generation, the people that are on the planet now, but for generations in the future. And that if you remove yourself from the system, you are creating such a significant impact by not being a part of that system. So you should feel really good about, that's your power. That's your power that you're unleashing by just not being a part of it. So this whole idea that you are, removed from that system, from that, from what I'll call the standard American food system, you're already creating an impact. You're already unleashing your power, and you should feel really good about that. Another thing I like to talk about, that I do talk about in the book, is this idea of compassion being a part of your power. And I think that that probably seems at odds for people. We kind of have we kind of have this attitude that we're almost giving up power if we are compassionate. But really, I maintain that we can unleash the ultimate power within ourselves through compassion for ourselves and for others. You see clearer when you have compassion for other people and for other, for your whole environment, for other beings on the planet, including people. You see the connection between things when you are able to be compassionate. When you're compassionate, you're not built, you don't have a defense, right? Like oftentimes we feel like we have to defend what we're doing. And so that puts up a roadblock for that compassion that you might feel toward another person or toward an animal or toward the environment or whatever. And once we're able to sort of lay down that defensiveness and extend that compassion to ourselves and to everyone around us, things just get really clear, and you make these connections to things that you probably, it was hard for you to see before. And a part of this connection is just like, it's a clarity of solutioning, and it's not even like, I'm not even talking about anything like metaphysical or spiritual. I'm just talking about like seeing the world very clearly. Like I talk about this example in the book where I heard Jane Goodall talk one time about in Africa where these farmers kept experiencing elephants would come and, eat the crops. And so, of course, and we experience similar situations, right? In the US, it's not elephants, but where in another species is invading on these crops that you're growing. And so one of the solutions, of course, would have been and has been for people to kill the elephant or whatever invading animal it is. But of course, it's really that's sort of short-sighted, right? Because if it's not that elephant, it'll be another elephant. Dr. Goodall's had this, or observed another like ingenious solution to this was, instead of killing the animal, what is a way that you could deter this animal? Well, elephants are very frightened of bees. And the reason for this is that elephants have these very long trunks, and to have a bee in your trunk would be highly disconcerting. But the bees are attracted to the trunk because it's kind of this like moist environment. And so this solution that she saw to keep elephants away from these farmers' crops was that they would, install beehives on the fences around the farm. So if the elephants did disturb the fence, that would, of course, disturb the hive, and the bees would start coming out of this hive, and the elephants get the heck out of there. So this is what I mean by like, if we don't have this like automatic defensiveness to the elephant, and we have some compassion for the fact that the elephant is just trying to like feed itself, it doesn't know that that's, this crop that you've grown. It just sees, hey, I'm hungry. Here's a plant that I want to eat. So when you like have this compassion, this understanding for all this elephant's trying to do is feed itself, and now you start looking for other solutions, which actually the solution that's devised with this whole beehive scheme is more effective. And oh, by the way, the bees are a pollinator for the crops, right? that are in the farm anyway. So that's what I mean by, this compassion doesn't have to be this like woo-woo thing that I'm talking about. It's not like spiritual. It's not like your Mother Teresa. I'm just saying that when you have some compassion, it actually allows you to see things more clearly, like from the perspective of this this elephant, or from the perspective of any other person on the planet, or any other being on the planet. And that we can then solution more effectively. Same thing with ourselves, right? That this compassion that we're extending doesn't need to just be for anything outside of us. It's also important to have this compassion for ourselves. And I do talk about that pretty extensively in the first section of the book, because really I maintain it's going to be very difficult for you to make a lot of progress if you're still harboring a ton of self-shame and self-judgment. And so in this third part of the book, this is where I'm saying, now, if you can extend that compassion outside of yourself, it'll make it so much easier for now you to unleash your power on the world, to make that impact that you're looking for. When you have this compassion for others and you're embracing your own power, you are creating this connection with others, which is just sort of, it kind of continues this synergy that you're building. And the idea here behind all this is that, when you're insecure, which is just this, what happens when you're not living authentically, that diminishes your connection with others. When we create these connections with others, you're able to, ask for help. You're able to be interested in what they know and what they're working on. And you're going to be able to exchange ideas without the feeling of defensiveness, without feeling like you have to, either one up yourself or one down yourself. And it's just going to be more genuine. And that's going to do nothing but further your progress of this idea of unleashing your power. It's almost like a melting away of like a hard surface that was all around you, that was sort of keeping you hidden inside, that was keeping you locked inside. And once you're able to melt that away, then now your power starts to come out in whatever form your power starts to come out. And in the book, I do talk about some ways that, if you are sort of seeking, of course, as I said, you've already made a ton of progress just by getting this far of having that melting away happen. But now you're also so equipped to take the next step. And I maintain that, the world needs you. The world needs what you are able to uniquely contribute. It's not just about us. It's about everybody around us. It's about all of the animals around us, about the environment around us. And it's about, the generations that are to come next. I mean, I don't have children of my own, guys. I've never given birth, but I have I have stepkids, and I have nieces and nephews, and I so deeply care about the world that I am leaving to them. I want them to be able to experience a world as beautiful, if not more so, than the one that we are experiencing now. And so it gives me great fear and consternation that we're not doing that, and that we're not taking that responsibility seriously. In this book, I talk about some ways that you could potentially participate in leaving the world a better place, because I really do believe that the world needs you. And there's lots of ways that I don't go into in the book. And I'm sure there's things that I have not even thought about. But these are just a few ideas. And maybe this is a little seed that your brain will start working on, and you will manifest it into something, that's uniquely yours. But a few ideas, for your kind of new empowered self is, of course, health and wellness is maybe a one that's an obvious choice. You have this uniqueness about you and that people will connect to. And you most surely have something unique to say about your life experience and how you are experiencing health and wellness. And so being able to communicate that and being able to, offer that experience to other people, whether that's as some kind of coach or trainer or, fitness instructor or chef, maybe some kind of food brand or working like in some kind of, evidence-based nutrition organization that's already there. You have something unique to offer all of those areas. And I certainly think there's space for more voices in that, because as I said, you're going to say something unique and you're going to be able to stop to talk to a specific group of people that really connect with who you are and what you have specifically to say. Another area is agriculture. We've already, in the book, I go pretty extensively into the environmental mayhem that's kind of part and parcel to our current farming system. So there's a lot of room for improvement. Sustainable and regenerative agriculture is really the new path to mitigate the negative impacts of monocropping on the environment. And so there's just a lot of room of how to convert our existing industry into something that's more sustainable and helpful to the environment and to future generations. I know that many farmers feel stuck in their existing situation. And I know that many of you, I know that I can relate to that feeling of feeling stuck and it not being clear how to get out of your current situation. So the ways in which we could offer or become involved in agriculture and helping people get out of that existing system, that's another way to unleash your power. Another area that it seems like there's just so much opportunity to is plastic. So we have a massive plastic problem. At the time that I wrote this book, the Great Pacific Garbage Patch covers nearly 620,000 square miles. I highly encourage you to Google it. You can see how large it is and just see some of the images, because it's pretty horrific. The fact that there is this much plastic floating around like its own kind of island in the ocean. It's really depressing, and it just really makes me sad that this is kind of the impact that we're making on the world. But the problem, right, is that plastic isn't biodegradable. And so now, of course, not only are we leaving like the things like the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, I'm sure many of you are hearing about microplastics they're in you. Right. We all have microplastics now inside of us. And, that's distressing. That's concerning for a whole host of reasons. The government's not making any initiatives to address this situation. So, your unique participation in this industry, right? Perhaps it's a new biodegradable alternative. Perhaps it is your unique point of view within government, or perhaps it's developing, right, an alternative. Of course, we're starting to see more and more alternatives out there, but nothing that has so far been able to scale to the extent that plastic currently is. It may very well be that you have some unique set of skills to get involved in this issue one way or another. Again, that's another idea where the world needs you and it needs what you can uniquely provide to this. Like the food industry, fashion starts on farms. So monocropping is a problem that's happening in cotton farming, as well as I've already mentioned, for corn, soybeans, and wheat. And then, of course, any animal source materials that end up on your body that suffers from the same ills as the animal products that you eat. All that same environmental issue is happening for wool and fleece and leather. Fast fashion in particular, although it's not necessarily excluded just to fast fashion, but there's a whole string of issue. There's a lot of petroleum-based chemicals in fabric production. The fashion industry uses a lot of forever chemicals. You've probably heard of. Those are kind of the formal term for that is PFAS. And they're not only in your clothing, but they also pollute the environment in the manufacturing process. Also, fashion just requires like a lot of energy in the manufacturing process. So that's heavily reliant on fossil fuels. It also depends a lot on transportation, of course, just to move raw supplies. It also uses an enormous amount of water, which is a problem because fresh water is a limited resource. And then it just produces an ungodly amount of trash. Again, if you Google these images outside of fashion or clothing manufacturers, especially particularly in the developing world, it's really quite depressing. So yeah, it's really an industry that is just kind of ripe for disruption from an environmental standpoint and an ethical standpoint. And of course, some brands are figuring that out. They're figuring out and just putting greenwashing in their marketing. But there are some brands that are emerging that are really trying to be good environmental stewards. So yeah, being a part of that solution, whether it's from like getting involved in the industry or just making different choices, when you're purchasing things, again, it's all about like, what can you uniquely be involved in? Another area to kind of unleash your uniqueness and your power potentially is just in investing. So in the US, at least, and I would say in most capitalistic societies, businesses really have no incentive to be better stewards of the environment, of their employees or the community. Many aspects, they might even be disincentivized to be better stewards. At least for publicly traded companies, the company is responsible for maximizing shareholder value first and foremost. Without knowledge of what's actually going on in the company, it's not going to be obvious what are the downstream effects of what these companies are doing without transparency there. Because if we're making decisions only based on the cost of a product, then we aren't going to see the other impacts of what this company is producing. And I would maintain that a financial description, if you will, of this company and its products is an inadequate description. That really, we all have interests that are beyond that financial description. And so we should be educated and knowledgeable about what the other impacts, the other descriptors, the other features, the other characteristics of a particular company or what they're producing. By no means is this meant to be a criticism of the system at all. The point is that transparency is really required for us to be good stewards of our own money and good stewards of, the planet and the people around us and our communities. So yeah, we have to make an effort to sort of pierce through the opaqueness that is surrounding a lot of what we buy. Everything from what we eat to what we wear to the products that we use in our homes to the cars that we purchase. It's incumbent upon us to really understand what is going into that and what are all the outputs. All the outputs. I say this as in terms of investing because we're all investors. Even if I haven't bought shares in a particular company, every time you buy a product, you are in essence investing in that company. And I would take it a step further that if you are an investor, if you are you actually have purchased shares in a company, even if sometimes we don't think of ourselves as investors if we have like a 401k, an IRA, but we are. I mean, that's where that money is. That's not just a savings account. That money is invested in stocks in these publicly traded companies. Now, they might be packaged differently. They might be packaged in a mutual fund and an ETF, whatever. The point is, it's still ultimately your money is invested. You are a shareholder in a company. So you can also, in addition to making decisions about what you buy, you can also make decisions about what you invest in. You can go to your financial advisor, whoever is the custodian of your money, and tell them, I don't want to be invested in McDonald's. I don't want to be invested in Coca-Cola. Whatever those screening elements that you determine for yourself, and they can, invest your money in other stocks. And effectively, you're just stating, here are what my values are, and I want my money to be an extension of those values. And now, the financial services industry is beginning to respond to what we kind of broadly call impact investing, where we say we realize that our money has an impact beyond a financial impact, and that I want to ensure that that impact that I'm having is in congruence with my values. Even if you're not in the financial services industry or don't have any desire to do that, again, you can participate in, you can have an impact, you can, unleash your unique power on the world by simply talking to your financial advisor and telling them what's okay with you and what's not okay with you. And if you are more interested in, in finance, there is a lot of activity happening now in impact investing. There's where I live in Colorado, there's the Impact Finance Center that is doing awesome things to educate people about how to invest their dollars in ways that are meaningful to them, that are in alignment with their values. And, people are able to make long-term investments, real return and achieve real returns on their money without even investing in publicly traded companies. They're really investing in, it's the Wall Street versus Main Street model, and that people are actually have entire portfolios in Main Street versus Wall Street. Again, these are just a few ideas of how you can unleash your power. It doesn't have to be this big dramatic thing where, you're quitting your job and pursuing something new. It's literally as simple as, what am I buying? What am I investing in? And just understanding more about that. And do you actually feel comfortable with where your money is going? Do you feel comfortable with all the impact that your money's having. And finally, what I think as it relates to this whole unleashing your power, and whether it's unleashing your power in kind of these, close personal ways, or whether it's you end up going out and pursuing something way outside of your comfort zone, it's really all going to come down to kind of this overcoming fear. I think for a lot of us, even just, talking to your financial advisor about what you want or don't want in your portfolio, that might come with some fear, right? Like, what are they going to think of me? And what does this mean if I want to do this? Or, all the way to the other end of the spectrum where you're deciding that you want to make some really large changes. It's all going to come down to kind of overcoming some fear that's real, and that's okay. And that is, again, like, it's that, like, reducing, trying to put down the judgment on ourselves, like, and not judging ourselves because we are afraid. But, being inspired by the fact that we want to live and leave the world a better place than where we found it, and like allowing that to drive ourselves and our intentions, and, just looking for ways to like help yourself overcome that fear and not judge ourselves just for having the fear. So yeah, there's a lot of ways to unleash your power on the world. And man, it's, I know that you have it. I know that you have this uniqueness about you. I know that you have a skill set, and I know that you have something that that you understand in a way that I don't, in a way that, the people around you don't. And that, gosh, it's really unfortunate. And it really makes me sad to think that you might not, bring that forth, because you're sick and you can't, or because you got yourself healed, but you're afraid. Bottom line is, it's possible to get out of your own way. I really hope that you're able to take what I've written, and if that can help you or inspire you in any way to take that big next step and keep taking those steps to move forward, I so hope that this book is able to inspire you and to give you some real tools to do that. Thanks again for joining me for Get Out of Your Own Way, the podcast, and hope to see you around soon.